This talk actually is going to be more videos than anything, and then we'll have a discussion. It really plays into what Teresa was just talking about with how do we create a solution or solutions for this challenge of mobility, challenge of land use, challenges of making it affordable. I have a question. How many people could afford, how should I rephrase this? Could not afford to live where they live today? I mean, I'm one of them, right? I think most of us are that way, and that's really a shame. And I know kids are moving away. They're either moving away to where it's cheaper or to where it's more exciting, like San Francisco. My nephew, he's probably never going to come back, and it breaks my heart. He's up in San Francisco, right? What do we have to do to make things attractive here? So we've got several videos, and one of the things we do on our neighborhood website, of course, we record all of our meetings, and we've had some great speakers. One of my favorites was last year. We had Dr. Alain Kornhauser and Shannon McDonald. Dr. Kornhauser is a professor at Princeton. He worked on the Apollo space mission. He is one of the leading experts on autonomous cars. Shannon McDonald, she wrote the book on the parking garage. I think Teresa mentioned parking. Well, something like 30% of the land in the city is for parking. That's a lot of assets. Cars. What's your car doing right now? What's it doing 95% of the time? It's sitting there, right? What a waste of resources. With this sharing economy that was discussed, things are starting to change. I talked to someone yesterday who was using the service called Getaround up in San Francisco. Her car is making money. People actually pay her to use her car while she's in a meeting like this. And it's this app that she has on her phone, or other people have on her phone, and they can take her car. So things are changing, and that's what this is about. Unfortunately, the images don't show up too well, but if we start with we'll start with the lower right image. And I think Linda knows Karen in the high-tech rover. There's a video that we have on the site. We don't need to play that video right now, but it's talking about the homeless challenges, and Linda has some interesting solutions there. But let's get to the idea of affordability, and this was mentioned, I believe Teresa mentioned it, this idea of how can you make housing that's more affordable, right? Not necessarily quote-unquote affordable housing that's subsidized, but how do we make market rate housing that people can afford, people like us who raised our hands? And so I have a real interesting two-part interview. That first one is the first part. It's a two-part interview with this guy, Patrick Kennedy. He's a developer. He's been developing for 25 years, and he's figured out what he thinks is the formula to making housing that's affordable. And this housing isn't necessarily going to be for everyone, but it's really pretty cool. This video, actually, we take a tour of a house, of a complex he built in San Francisco. He built it in 9th and Mission. Not a really good part of town, but what he's created is, he says there's three things, and he's got two of them in this one. Micro housing, so smaller housing. But smaller doesn't mean it has to be poorly insulated or poorly designed. It actually is the opposite. You can do more in 200 and 300 square feet if you do things right than you can with a 2,000 square foot house. It's very efficient. And you have common areas, you have rooftop gardens. So you can do some amazing things. And back to the idea of the sharing economy and things changing, well, you used to have records collections. You used to have books, right? Now they're all on, well, I don't have my phone, but they're all on tablets. They're on those things. They're up in the cloud. And that's happening more and more. So the need for physical space is decreasing. The second thing is car-free. He says you need to be car-free because, again, we talked about the parking problem, right? And so if you watch the video, you'll see there is no parking at this place. There's no parking at all. Well, there's a little bit. You know what the parking's for? Bicycles. And they have bikes, they use Zipcar. You go down to the lobby, the main lobby, and it's kind of like a Starbucks. They have tables and coffee tables and so forth. They have a heated bench you can sit on and wait for your Uber to show up, and it has a screen showing all your different transit options. So this is when the bus is coming in. This is maybe a Getaround or a Zipcar. So it's a whole different way of thinking. And again, mobility costs money. The average household spends something between $8,500 and $10,000 a year just on transportation. And that's a lot of money when you add up all the insurance, the gas, and so forth. And not to mention the environmental impacts of having these resources, these hunks of metal sitting out there, when really what we want to do is move people, not necessarily metal. So We have micro-housing, car-free, and the third thing he talks about is modular. And this is where we get into the theme of today's talk, which is the idea if you can create modules. You've seen, probably many of you have seen container-type houses. Well, this is the same kind of concept. You build modules, almost like Lego blocks, and you then can take those modules and assemble them relatively fast. And you can assemble them in non-traditional places, like over parking lots. He's been talking to the city of San Francisco about the idea of using public parking lots, take them out of commission for about 6 months, and while he's doing that, he puts a cement platform on there, and then he starts building these modules. So suddenly, you've taken air rights above something that was kind of useless land. What Ken was just talking about, down San Tomas Creek, that's a pretty darn ugly place, right? It's just a concrete strip. It's the kind of the worst of what we came out of the 50s. Well, imagine putting maybe a row of these houses with maybe a green park along, like they have in New York, called the High Line. So now you're starting to use air rights that are already there. And who owns those air rights? The public, exactly. So then you can start to do some creative things about things like how you provide affordable housing. You know, it becomes a way to leverage any funds that might be there. So, and maybe helps with displacement issues, especially if it's nearby. So that inspired this the second video we'll play called Capping the Freeway. So this is, instead of a cap grant, like we talked about earlier, this is a grant for a cap. But we'll talk about that in a moment. First, I want to talk about something that's kind of zooming in, but I want to look higher level and look at this from a county perspective. Look at it from using mobility and land use. Use that to stitch the county together, to stitch livable and walkable communities together.